In this video, I'm building a DIY tent stove. Light, portable, and easy to break down. Tough enough though for reenactments, and simple enough to make it in a home workshop with basic tools. Stick around because by the end of the video, we're testing to see if it will work when we fire it up. So stick around. Enough said, join me and I'll show you just how I built it. Besides the time it takes to build this, the material costs really add up fast, but fortunately some of my buddies came in and helped me out and were able to provide me this metal, so thank you. Whipping out the angle grinder to score where bends needed to be and also where through holes needed to be cut. The front and back through holes I cut most of the way through and just left the corners so they could easily be broken out.
I'm going to try to break up these front panels. Oh, this one's just ready to come out.
Well, this part of the task was far from being done. Had to whip out the angle grinder with a grinding disc to clean up all the burrs. Otherwise, I would risk turning my hand into a fillet.
This is about enough piece of metal I picked up along a railroad track.
So why this is cool is the French Resistance demoed a lot of rails, so they would have had access to this type of scrap that they could have had laying around for their improvised projects and gear. And just to be clear, I just picked up a random piece that was laying next to a crossing. I didn't have to tear apart or pull anything apart. It was just scrap that had been discarded.
I have no clue what metal this is. Maybe really hard. We'll see. We'll see how well it turns. If it turns really well, I am going to turn my hinge pin out of it as well. If it turns hard, I'm just gonna bore a hole in it and put a pin through it.
Adding a little bit of oil to make it run smoother, it turned out, get what I did there, that I was able to turn the metal and to make the hinge pin.
Okay, so I have the two hinge pins done. I now need to make the mating part for both of these that will weld to the frame of the stove.
It's time to take the plunge and bore right through these. Don't get bored. You know the drill. Sorry, I just had to say that.
I have one hinge made already, then it's nice and freely, so I'm going to just have to be careful when I weld this on. This is going to be welded onto the body, and then the door will be able to fit in like that, and pivot. I don't think you can see it, but there's a hairline crack here, and I keep welding this. I know I'm getting full penetration, but I think it's because it's 40 degrees outside right now, and thermal shock and warping and tensions and all of that. And I don't have a torch right now that has gas, so I can't keep this heated so it can cool off slowly and de-stress. This is a little frustrating, as I think I got it good now. So it's time to add the hinges, which I've made. So I make sure I put the right sides down so that I can actually take the door off, which is part of the design that I'm going with this. The old design, the previous one I made, I could not do that, so this is a big improvement.
Hey, while welding, just thought to mention, stick around to the end and we will fire this thing up. Now a page from a book called Lessons I Learned the Hard Way. The last stove I made, I cut all the holes in after I made the whole box, making it really hard to get in and clean up the edges so I wouldn't shred my hand just when I thought about putting my hand there or looked at these edges. These are the type of edges that just jump out and cut you. Even though I scored this sheet metal, I didn't quite have the guns to bend it by hand, so adding a little bit of, well, leverage sure did the trick. I can't tell you how many times I've used this adjustable crescent wrench trick before, but it's come in clutch many a time.
And I'm adding the top to the stove up here.
Okay, this might be a good time to actually show a few key features to the design, versus when the sides are on and you can't see inside. Oh! So, these walls and main body are made out of 2.5mm thick material. This top, though, is just over 3mm thick. They look very, very similar to just in my eye, though. The idea, though, that I'm hoping to accomplish with this is that the thicker metal on the top will be less likely to warp than this, being able to better withstand the weight of having pots and stuff on top while there's heat coming from inside of here. Now, ideally, thicker metal holds up better, but thicker the metal, the heavier the metal, thus the heavier the stove. So I'm trying to make this as light as possible and as easy to move around as possible while retaining the structural integrity necessary. Now, I don't have the door with me right now, but the door, as you can remember and as you will see, comes from here to about here and up to here, all the way down to here. The idea of that is to create a better seal, even though that there's no gaskets or anything involved with this stove. A better seal than the original design where the door just fit inside the opening. The stove is also a few inches larger than the other stove that I originally made.
And now for that extra material on top. Like a bad haircut, just lop it off and pretend it was intentional. Welding all the panels in place takes a lot of time as there's a lot of seams, but once it's all fused, I grind it clean and pretend I nailed all the welds perfectly on the first try. Such pretty welds.
Okay, this is a start to a new day, and on this day, my goal is to sort out the legs of the stove and stove vent and the air intake. Looking around through my scrap metal, trying to get an idea on how I can make these legs removable, because I want to be able to pull these legs off the stove and then stick them inside the stove for storage. What I found was this little piece of strap banding or whatever that is bent just like that. So I take the side of the stove and just take a small section of this and weld it along here. It creates a little pocket right there. I could slide a little piece of this angle iron up into it. Quick note about this stuff's galvanized. Not really supposed to weld this. I'm welding this outside though. I'm doing all the metal work outside, which is kind of a pain because it's not my workshop, but at least the fumes are not going throughout the house. So that's the plus and the reason why I'm welding outside.
Cutting out these leg tabs from an old angle iron bed frame, maybe it's not far from what the Resistance might have or could have used if they were building something like this or making something out of steel. A few quick marks and then straight onto the angle grinder to cut it out to the shape that is needed, and then we'll be on to the welding stage again.
So I have the piece cut out, I just need to tack weld it into place.
Tacking the pockets in place, this stuff is thin and loves to burn through, so it's a slow game of controlled zaps tacking into place. As long as it holds, we're good. Again, we're going more for function here than appearance.
So that seems to work. I think I need to add a little tab that supports it on this side so that the leg doesn't have tendency to rock back and forth as much. Or if I just create a flat plate that will sit under here.
After test fitting the first leg and pocket, I knew the whole system worked, so it's now time to cut out the rest of the legs. I chopped up the 3 other legs from the same old angle iron and got to work welding the remaining pockets onto the firebox. There's a lot of cutting and a ton of welding and a whole lot of grinding in between, most of which I will spare you, but while building out the rest of the legs, I also cut and welded on small square plates near the top of each leg. These plates sit flush to the bottom of the firebox when the legs are slotted in. That way the whole thing sits solid and no rocking, no wiggling, and no need for screws or fasteners.
Let's try standing this up now that the legs are on. Besides the ground being uneven, works quite well.
With the legs done, I'm moving on to the stovepipe bump out. I've already cut most of the pieces and started welding the plates. This setup sandwiches the firebox walls between the inner lip and the outer walls of the firebox bump out. No screws needed, just friction and fit to hold this all in place. After fitting these pieces together and welding the box together, I moved on to the next step. For the clamp ring, I started with a flat strip of steel. Using a vise, I carefully bended it, shaping it into a rough circular shape to fit snugly around the stovepipe. To turn the square top of the stovepipe bump out into a rounded opening, I welded 4 rounded corner plates onto the corners. This created a rounded opening that I could then weld the clamp ring onto to secure the stovepipe, locking it all into place. It's simple, a solid setup that holds the pipe firmly. No fasteners needed. Now onto the door. I'm making the latch that holds the door shut. I start by cutting and hand filing the catch, the part that gets welded onto the firebox for the latch arm to hook onto. Once that was shaped, I welded it into place. Next, I cut a long piece of flat steel to make the latch arm and added a small bump out in it that I could shape, and I could bend it to 90 degrees to create a simple handle for opening and closing the door. I drilled a hole into the arm using the drawer press. This will let it pivot on the door using a single screw. And speaking of that door, it's time to drill a hole in that so that I can tap a hole in that and mount the latch arm with the screw. Improving on the previous stove I made a rotating air vent to control the airflow into this firebox. First I cut the shape from flat steel and drilled a center hole for the pivot screw. I then drilled and tapped a matching hole in the door to mount the vent to. I then marked where the larger air intake holes needed to be, and then I drilled those on the drill press. Once those were all drilled and everything was tapped, I then threaded everything together as a test fit. With it all in place, the firebox is done. Let's take it outside and fire it up.
Actually, my first time setting it up outside, so I don't know what the easiest approach is. Figure this out a little bit as we go. Apparently I left some scrap metal in there. I don't need that in there either. Now to install the back. Get a little bit more paper to help get this fire started. Well, forget paper, I just raided the recycling bin and grabbed some cardboard. So I'm not gonna make a huge fire, I'm just using a little bit of scrap wood because I don't want this fire lasting very long. I'm testing this stove right now for 2 reasons. 1 is so I can show you guys, and 2, so I can see if there's anything I need to fix or change before the reenactment season begins, because we're very, very, very close to the first reenactment.
The stove's running strong, and it's one more thing that is ready for this year's reenacting season. I've been working behind the scenes trying to get some gear ready so that I can hopefully film some first-person reenacting footage to share with all of you. I'm hoping that will work out, and I'm looking forward to getting that out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button. It really helps this video get seen. And if you want to see more historical builds, reenacting content, and behind-the-scenes projects, consider subscribing. Got ideas, questions, or something you do differently? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Thanks for watching. Let's keep building something brave together.